Okay, now we are ready for Andrew. So we are on to the feedback on the equity report. So we'll start with that.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Do I need to unmute myself on Zoom?
No.
No, because we said
It
that.
all does it, I know.
Right, all right. So folks here, folks on Zoom, good evening. My name is Andrew Nemicha. I'm the DEIB Director for CPS and CCRSD. Today's agenda, as you will see there, we're going to touch on three areas. Feedback on the equity audit that was presented to the school committee on January 17th. I'm going to give you all an update on the bias incident reporting flowchart and a draft complaint form. And then we'll touch on our hiring efforts to date. And then, of course, the additional updates there, the various events that are happening this month. We now have an active DEIB Student Advisory Council. We held our first meeting back on January 14th. And a lot of the work is beginning to evolve. A lot of student voice, student engagement, a lot of students that want to have their voices heard and be courageous in really bringing a lot of this work to their peers. So I'm very excited to start that effort with our students. The students in the advisory council are primarily students at CCHS, and so a lot of great work to come. So I'm hoping to give you all an update on some of our work and some of the initiatives they're thinking about, perhaps in our next DEIB space committee meeting. As you will see there, Alcott has a multicultural food festival on March 9th at 5 p.m. Concord Carlisle High School Multicultural Food Festival on March 15th at 5 p.m. Willard has a international festival on March 26th at 3 p.m. And as you just heard from Joyce, Perot also has their international festival on March 17th at 5:30. So I just wanted us to, first on the agenda, I wanted us to just take some time to have a brief, sort of a follow-up discussion regarding the equity audit. I know as I was listening to Dr. Warnham and Dr. Blake, I was taking notes and sort of listening in on some of the comments they were making, and then also simultaneously looking at the equity audit findings and recommendations. So I had a couple of moments of reflection, and I will first like to just share those and then open it up for folks to just, share a few thoughts. One of the, and I'm just going to rattle off a few items here because there's a whole, it's like 3 pages worth of reflection here. One of the main themes that I heard from Dr. Warnham and Dr. Blake is that it takes 3 years to change a culture. Okay, example, implementing a bias incident reporting system may literally take 3 years for our stakeholders to understand and trust the reporting process. So I want to make sure we are all on the same page on that. There was numerous times where Dr. Warnham and Dr. Blake shared some data around, some consensus around the data, and one of them being that the district, and I think we heard from students, faculty, and parents, that the district should make ambitious goals, even if we don't accomplish them during a particular time or period. And I think that says a lot. I think we have been so intentional about the work. And I think oftentimes we have humbled ourselves while we're doing the work, but I think this is time that we really do make those ambitious goals and make sure that, the voices of all the stakeholders that were involved in the equity audit are represented and heard, because this is what they want us to do. And I think we should do right by their feedback that they have offered in the audit. Many teachers, and I just want to highlight this on slide number 12, many teachers do not feel equipped to handle issues of DEIB when they arise in the classroom. When asked, when a sensitive issue of DEIB arises in the classroom, how easily can you think of strategies to address the situation? I believe more than, let me just slide over to slide number 12. I'm going to share my screen so folks see the data. When we look at that slide, we will note that a number, and this is broken out by demographics based on the responses. As you will see for our white teachers who identify as white, you will see there that close to well over 40% said that it is, neither easy or hard to respond to those issues. And some even said, it's difficult and very difficult, right, to respond to those issues. And I think that speaks to the heart of the work. The work around DEIB is complex, it is hard. But I do think the years of professional development that we have provided our faculty and staff, we are seeing a breakthrough, right, in our educators' comfortability, I guess, around addressing some of these issues. We have a lot of educators speaking up about their commitment and really taking that intentional approach to be actively engaged in the work. Just yesterday, Dr. Hunter and I were over at the high school where our DEIB teacher leads, Cricket McCaffrey Clark, science teacher, and Jamie Andrade, art teacher, facilitated a very comprehensive discussion around microaggressions, and the entire high school faculty were broken up into groups, these large groups, having these very vulnerable, hard conversations around microaggressions that they have witnessed within the school. So each of the groups had a list of scenarios that were generated from our students, actually, back in November when we held our Ideas DEIB workshop. So teachers had a real taste of some of the microaggressions that have occurred within the walls of CCHS. And they were very vulnerable in allowing themselves to engage in conversation around those scenarios. And I think that's powerful, right? Many, in other spaces, you would have had folks just completely remain silent. And as we floated in the different groups, folks were talking, folks were having the conversation, the difficult conversation, right? And so I think that
can I interrupt?
that's important.
It was so intimate, you almost felt
Very
like you
intimate.
didn't want to observe very long because they
Right.
were so intensely communicating and sharing. It felt like you should be part of the group or sort of not participating. It was really
Was that a
amazing.
faculty meeting?
Faculty meeting.
So remember, we're using faculty meetings for PD on DEI, SPED, and MTSS, and this was one of the DEI sessions at the high school.
I also had the pleasure of bringing the equity audit to our DEIB strategic steering committee last Wednesday. And so we broke up into groups. There were roughly 4 groups, and each group had the task of reviewing each of the equity audit findings, and then to just have really high level discussions about some of the themes that they gathered. And so, I'm just going to share a few of that feedback that I received from them. There's a strong need for us to create some form of a video highlighting a day in the life of a MECO student. I think we often talk a lot about and probably make a lot of assumptions about what our MECO students experience on a day-to-day, and it varies from our MECO student athletes to the student who just heads home after school, right? Their lives very much varies. And so I know Felicia Paisley, our CPS MECO director, is working on this initiative. And so more to come on that.
It'll be really powerful. I happened to see
Extremely.
1 years ago that a
Yep.
student made as part of a class project, and
Right.
really powerful to live that 5 o'clock alarm all the way till they get home, and
Mhm.
the student voice narrating it, and selfies throughout the day.
Right.
How it goes. Definitely a good idea.
I will continue with METCO. There was also a need to go beyond advertising all the different buses that we offer for our METCO students, particularly our after school buses. And so, families, folks in the school system, they have access to our METCO bus schedule via our school site under the METCO department webpage. However, I think it's important that we also make sure, perhaps it's at the beginning of the school year, at that first opening day or the first faculty meetings, that our educators get hard copies of that bus schedule, right? And that we we go above and beyond advertising that information. And I think it will be helpful for teachers now that high school is gonna have a new bell schedule and flex blocks and all that. It will be important for us to make sure that teachers understand when our buses are running, particularly in the after school times, and really perhaps help students reach students and have them perhaps stay after school for that additional help. So more to come on that. And then lastly, just from one of the groups, I believe that was, let me see here. Lastly, one of the groups also mentioned, is it possible to see each category, how many students were interviewed for each of the categories, and also to share data around the breakdown of the different racial groups and how each of those racial groups responded to any other particular questions. We have that data. It is literally a massive binder that I think it's a summer project of mine, and because if I attempt to do that now, it will not be done with fidelity. And so I think we have a lot of time in the summer to really dive deep into looking at that data, the raw data. So more to come on that. So I will pause there and just open it up for any thoughts on the equity audit.
Court, yeah.
In regard to the steering committee, is there, I assume there is there an intersection between steering committee work and strategic plan work? How does that get connected?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, given that this is our first formal establishment of that DEIB strategic steering committee, the approach that I took was really to inform the committee about all the work that is taking place, from the implementation of our 5-year DEIB strategic plan to all the different initiatives, right? I think the more folks on that committee know about the work, the better they are going to be positioned to practice being an actual steering committee where they inform directly how some of these initiatives come to fruition. And so this year has been really about just informing folks about the work, bringing to the committee updates similar to what I'm doing now, and then having conversations, because I am one person and I rely heavily on feedback and input. And I think the steering committee has been extremely helpful in helping me think of other ways to, approach a certain initiative, or particularly even this evening, this bias incident reporting tool. It's been helpful. The committee has been helpful, and to be able to bring in a presenter from Belmont, Human Rights Council, to speak directly about their bias reporting process, and then to have the committee sort of ask these really eye-opening questions, really help inform me how I go about making those revisions needed to get us to a place where we have a solid plan in terms of our bias reporting tool.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the reporting. I'm sure everybody is. We have somewhat of a majority of people who aren't clear on what the system is, and yet the answer at the present time is, well, there are many ways.
Yep.
But if there are many ways and people don't know any ways, then I think one of the strategic debates that you're gonna help or lead is, how much is this reporting centralized? So there's one very known workable system that yields results. And do we give up this multitude of other reporting that might be necessary, because sometimes people don't go to a system, they go to an adult they trust. So I don't know how that's going to get fleshed out, but it's going to be challenging. Let me come back to strategic plan for a minute. And I know this is on Kristen's mind. We're about to reach this critical point where we're trying to put some real measures next to our intentions. And I'm going to guess now that the steering committee is not quite ready to weigh in on that to the extent that you and Kristen are. Would that be accurate?
And when you say the committee, the DEIB committee or the strategic planning?
The steering committee.
The steering committee. Yeah, I think we are a few ways. We have a few ways to go. It's only March. And I think we also have couple of topics that we have to get through as a committee. One of it being MECO, special education, family engagement is one of the topics coming up. But I do see the committee informing, well, number one, reviewing the progress that we have done this year and review that against the accountability measures that the strategic planning committee put together last spring, right? To inform what we now have in the strategic plan. I think we have to, there will be a time, definitely before the school year ends, to review that information. And then, of course, I think the next step would be to then generate next year's accountability measures and try to align that directly with the strategic planning accountability measures that we will create together.
So essentially that piece is gonna kind of catch up with the
Exactly.
strategic plan.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And also now that we have the equity audit, we've got to, make sure that's in alignment with the equity audit recommendations as well.
Good.
In the steering committee, it's been great. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion. It's been really good. And when the woman from Belmont came in, particular to talk about the reporting system, she's like, this takes time. You might get one report and then it just takes time. And when you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, it's gonna be 3 years. And you're right, Court. I mean, it's, are you gonna go to trusted adults? Are you gonna go to a forum on a website? And I think that's all up for discussion. And, we want to take reporting any way it comes for now and figure out what the best way to deal with that is. But it's been really a helpful use of time. And even, I think we have 2 people from the Human Rights Council in Concord on that committee. And neither one of them have kids in the school. So they've been great. Like they've been, asking about like, tell us about the PD, tell us about this. And it sounds great what you're doing. So they've gotten a lot of information, which I think has been helpful.
So, Andrew, one of the recommendations was parent, I don't see on the list, that's what I'm asking, parents workshop. What was your interpretation of that?
Yeah, so I think that we already offer, and Kristen will second this, we already offer a lot of professional learning opportunities for parents through adult and community education. I think we really need to encourage parents to seek out those learning opportunities. It might require that we perhaps shore up a couple of our advertising efforts so that information reaches our parent community. But those learning opportunities, those different workshops, topics do exist for our parent community.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, we need to go where they are, right? We probably need to go to, especially the schools that don't have MECO students in them, Willard and Thoreau. I feel like that's really important, because there's that. Some families in Concord really don't know anything about the MECO program or our DEIB efforts. I mean, I know you've been screening from the mountaintops. I'm not saying you're not doing enough, but sometimes I think we need to go to them instead of having them come participate in, because I don't know the numbers of people who've been participating in those opportunities. I have no idea. Maybe they're high, maybe they're medium, maybe they're low. But I think it's important that we really try to reach our families when they're younger or new to the community, and might not just be plugged into those opportunities. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are many ways to go about reaching those families. And one idea that I have is, for any new family that is enrolling their child, perhaps in that registration packet, there, perhaps there's a pamphlet in there about the history of MECO, about DEIB, about, that way we sort of get families, get them aware of a lot of the work that's happening right off the bat, and then ways to get involved.
Yeah.
Whether it's the PTG, whether it's the DEIB steering committee, but.
Yeah, good,
Absolutely.
excellent, thank you.
I just have a question about this,
Yes.
the project that Felicia's working on.
Yes.
I think that, being a MECO student is so unique, a former MECO student here and my son's a former MECO student now. How is it gonna be distributed? Like, how are we gonna see this? And is it gonna include you know, you're gonna interview like former MECO students, and so, you know, it covers the base from what a student, you know, after high school, after, you know, just it follows everything through, just so families and families in Concord also can see like, you know, the whole life of a medical student, like how it affects your whole life, not just the schooling.
Yeah, great question. You know, Felicia and I have not fleshed out all the details, but we have definitely discussed the idea of having perhaps like a film producer.
Oh, what?
Film producer,
Yeah.
follow the students rather than have the students themselves, or rather, you know, have student volunteers follow their peers. Cause that might get, you know, might get a bit tricky. So we're thinking perhaps we have, you know, trained film producer, videographer, follow the students. Obviously, we have to get some permission from parents to invite, you know, that videographer into their household and so forth. And we also would love to equip any student that is interested in being part of this video project. We'd love to equip them with a camcorder that they themselves carry around, or use their cell phones, or, you know, to document their own experience from the moment they wake up all the way to the moment they go to bed, right? And we're lucky to have Minuteman Media. We're at the high school, and you know, I've had great collaboration with them along the way for the time that I've been here in Concord, and I know they'll be willing to do all the editing work for us. And so that's as far as we have gone, but we do want to make sure that there's a variety of students, because each student's experience is very, very different, depending on whether you're an athlete, an academic, you know, and so
Right.
forth. So,
I know of one MECO student who is actually in study film. in
I do
college.
too.
You do too, right?
I
So
know
like you
exactly.
never know if, you know, that might work too. And Bedford did a video, I think,
Yes.
last year or
Yeah.
2 years ago, something like that, so.
Yeah,
it
the
was
student
very
you're
well
thinking
done,
of is in
right?
my back pocket,
Okay,
because I
good.
have seen him
Have
carrying
you
around the
seen his work?
camcorder all the
Yes,
time,
yes.
and he's so passionate about it, and. glad that he's
Actually,
back.
I think there are multiple students.
Yes,
Yes,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
we'll talk later.
Andrew, I haven't thought this through fully, but
Mm,
I just want to share an idea with you, or a hope, and that is that in addition to a powerful telling of the unique features of life as a Metco student, there's also part of the story that makes very clear Metco kids are kids. That when you arrive at that school, we're serving one population, not a bunch of independent populations that are side by side. That's going to be difficult to do, because you want to tell the uniqueness of Metco, but we don't want, my personal belief is we also want it to come through that all kids have some fundamental rights and needs that we're delivering to, and we haven't forgotten that. If that can come through, I think we could even strengthen the Metco message.
Anyone else? Yeah,
Quick question.
Yeah.
We talked about providing workshops to parents. Are we working with the community? Because those kids move out into the community and they have experiences with businesses and establishments that aren't always positive. Are we working with the community to make that experience?
Yeah, maybe if I could jump in,
Yeah.
because I should have said this when Cynthia asked her question as well. I just remind the group that the Center for Parents and Teachers came under the auspices of Adult and Community Ed. So we've expanded that role. So training for parents, I think, is what you were really bringing up, is now being developed. We have a little bit right now, but it's much bigger for next fall. And then in terms of the community, we're still running the Can We Talk series, which is bringing in like Paula Martin and other experts to do different parts of training. So, but it is the word is out, but people have to select to come. Yeah.
And I just add that the Human Rights Council partnership we have is very strong. That was part of the Martin Luther King Day event.
Yeah.
It was a community-wide event and we were a piece of it. So I think we're regrouping. We had a lot going on in pre-COVID and it's on its way back to that same
Choked on
level
my tea.
of opportunity.
And I know that the community, with the help of CORE, we just wrapped up a community-wide
Right.
screening of who we are. Chronicle of Racism in America by Jeffrey Robinson. We had various community organizations host that screening, from the League of Women Voters to CORE. So that again just speaks to the partnerships that we have beyond the walls of the school around training parents, raising the awareness of parents.
I think that a segue from your question, Sharon. There is a citizen petition in front of the Concord Town Meeting for a DEIB director. So we can't forecast exactly where that's gonna go. But it's not too early to start to coordinate with those efforts, because if we have now not one, but someday two DEIB directors, the coordination is gonna have to be really good, or somebody's gonna claim we're over-resourced, which is not gonna be true, but we don't even want to discuss that. We want that coordination, I think, to be very, very strong.
I don't want to put words in Sharon's mouth, but when I hear community, I also think of our students walking around downtown, and that might not be people who live here, that might be a number of different shop owners and restaurants and so forth. The town manager does have $75,000 in her budget, not for DEIB efforts, not targeted at a director per se. We also have a survey that's encompasses more of the experiences of people in town that the town is running, and that's still open, I believe.
Yes.
Gonna close pretty soon, and I think it will be useful to us as a community, part of the community, to look at that. It gives us more information and data to look at really what the experiences are for people in Concord. So that's my 2 cents.
Sarah,
Can I just ask a question, like looking forward way into the future? When we first started talking about this survey, we talked about also having the ability, I know you have the binder, the ability to drill down. I think that there were a few, questions about how kids identify and things like that. And so to what extent are you finding, and I don't know if you look into this side of the data at all yet, but that there are takeaways about as the scope of DEIB, looks at gay, lesbian, and trans, and different elements of belonging and inclusion and equity and diversity. To what extent are you finding that that there are takeaways from some of those answers that you can say, oh, look, our trans kids are having are disproportionately experiencing one thing or
I will say, first takeaway is that we are not doing enough around conversations that uplift the voices of our students, faculty, parents, guardians who identify with the LGBTQ+ community. That was very clear in one of the questions. And that is feedback that if you spend time with the Spectrum Club over at the high school, they will reiterate that there is this level of uncomfortability. We see that with race-based conversations, but when it comes to LGBTQ+ conversations, it's silent. And so I think that is one area topic that we really need to begin to, offer those training, whether it is affinity group-based conversations, just to break out that level of uncomfortability around having conversations that impact a population of students, faculty, staff, and parents that live and work right here in town. So
Maybe I could just add, because I know you're interested in the youth risk behavior survey that we see year after year for the last 20 years. Of course, it's a nationwide survey, but we participate in a group run by Emerson Hospital. But we see it every risky behavior there is disproportionately, you see kids who are historically marginalized doing it. And so, depression, anxiety, suicide ideation, all of those things at much greater risk for bullying, for harm. I mean, it's really, really concerning.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I didn't know to what extent you were able to actually, to see, like, is this also true in our community, or, are we able to mitigate it to some extent, or, or is this something that we can work on? Yeah. And back to the Center for Parents and Teachers, CCAC tomorrow night. That's a talk, and then later on in the month, they're having one about gender pronouns, right? Like how to navigate.
Is
that
that on
non-gendered pronouns?
Sorry.
I can
Didn't
tell
want to mix
you,
up.
we decorated the Concord Bookshop.
Oh, the
window the
window.
other day. Yes,
Okay.
highly recommend,
All right, we'll check it out,
but I'll look it up, and
Okay.
tell you.
I didn't know if it was in person or Zoom.
I think they're about, right?
Usually there's a hybrid. Yeah, I just
Okay.
don't know about that particular one.
Thank you for that.
So I think I'm gonna transition to
Yeah.
probably the meat of the
Yeah,
conversation this
that'd be great.
evening,
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
bias incident reporting. So I have with me, and I'm gonna pass this out.
All on Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
You will have the flow chart, which is front and back. In the back is FAQ section. And again, I want to emphasize that this is a draft.
Thank you.
And the second page is the draft. Is the draft of.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, I'll just measure.
Second page is the draft of the reporting form. So what you see there, on that flow chart, let's begin with that, is, this first and foremost, I want to say that a lot of the information that you see on the flow chart, the FAQ, the incident reporting form, I used Boston College's bias related incident report form and Belmont Public Schools bias incident report form to inform the development of this flow chart and of the actual complaint form. So I want to make sure folks hear that loud and clear. And then folks on Zoom, I am simply going to share my screen so you can follow along. Oftentimes I have way too many screens open, as you see here. So let me.
Not the only one.
All right, share. Present. This way. All right, so let's begin with the flow chart. So what you see in front of you in terms of the flow chart is really our protocol to responding to hate crime and bias motivated incidents. And so the first column under number one is the report. That is where, a report is generated. We have a victim or an impacted person or someone who witnessed a hate crime or bias motivated incident. They use our form and submit a complaint form to us. Now, us is defined as, shift over to column number 2 where it says incident review. The building principal or their designated school administrators, myself as a DEIB director, will receive any incident, any bias incident report that comes to us being the school district. The building principal or their designee will acknowledge the reported within 1 school day and take the steps to restore a sense of safety to the alleged victim and the school community. The building principal will inform the following school administrators and other school-based staff as appropriate. And those individuals, those other school administrators includes Dr. Hunter, Kristen Herbert and Bob Conry as our assistant superintendents, the director of student services, Debbie Dixon, and director of human resources, Denise Zahn. Column 3, information gathering. Oftentimes we see that, you know, there is a possibility that an incident report form comes in and there is no contact information to follow through. And often that can make the job of the principal, whomever is investigating the incident, can make that process difficult, right? And so we want to make sure that before we launch an investigation, that the building principal or their designee is able to determine all the different people that are involved in the incident, including parents, guardians, just to make sure that we are able to reach out to those involved parties. Column 4 is the investigation. Regardless of anonymity, the building principal or their designee will investigate the bias motivated incident according to the district's grievance procedure for complaints of harassment or discrimination based on race, national origin, religion, disability, age, sexual orientation, or gender. Those are the protected classes under Mass General Law. And then the box that you see there highlighted in purple, again, was adapted from Boston College's hate crimes and bias related incident protocol. And it really just illustrates and defines who the incident investigators are for those who are impacted in comparison to the alleged aggressive. So as you see there, the principal or their designee have a huge role to play within each of those scenarios that are illustrated there. I think it's important that the building principals or their designee play that role, and by law, they are responsible for investigating any of these bias motivated incidents that occur in their school building. And then, of course, in green, number 5 is safety and support planning. We must not forget that after an incident bias, after a bias incident, that there is not only the victim that's impacted, but the community is impacted as well. And so the building principal or their designee will determine when or if to include other internal and external stakeholders in the response, safety, and support planning process. These stakeholders include the administrative team, mental health team, director of student services, director of human resources, local law enforcement, and of course, our legal counsel. So I will pause there because there's a lot of information that I just rattled off. And so I want folks to just take a minute to perhaps look at the flow chart. If you have any questions, concerns, suggestions, feedback, this will be the time to share. And I also want to mention that this draft flow chart that you see is very much the vision for it's pretty much geared, I'd rather say that, it's pretty much geared toward the adult community. We are, as of yesterday, I gathered some feedback from our admin team, and I think we all agree that it will be wise to create sort of an age-appropriate, student-friendly version of this flow chart and of the complaint form as well. So myself, CMS principal Justin Cameron, and CCHS principal Katie Stahl, we are actually going to host a small focus group with student leaders across a number of student clubs and organizations, ranging from student government to the Intersections Club, Black Student Union, Asian Affinity Group, etc. And really to leverage the students' feedback to inform the creation of this sort of student-friendly version of this response flow chart, and of course the form as well. So I'll pause there and open up for questions.
So I just have a question. So why does it say before you would like someone to contact one of you?
Which part are you looking at?
In the second paragraph, does it believe you have been a target or witness?
Not
of
the
hate
flow
crime?
chart.
Not the
No,
flow chart? Okay, so do you mind holding on to that question?
Yeah.
Because I just want us to focus on the flow chart
Yeah.
first, and then we can transition right into the form.
I have a question on the
Yes.
flow chart. So this is for teachers. Will parents also get this?
So that is the grand question, I think. I
For a
think,
version
I will say that, to answer your question, yes,
Mhm.
parents will have access, hopefully will have access to this. I think we have to make sure, because the language that is within this flow chart, within the complaint form, it's, you know, it's language that I feel like a student, you know, kids will just sort of gloss over. Right? And so I think if parents can partner with us to make sure that their child really understands this flow chart to begin as a baseline, that's important. The actual reporting form is going to be different for the adults and for the students. I
Okay.
think that was in agreement with the admin team yesterday.
And I think that, you know, do you have a timeline for when you want to launch this?
Yes, so it's not fleshed out. However, I think we need to, myself, Justin and Katie, we want to make sure we host this focus group before the end of the month. That's our goal.
Okay,
And then in addition to that, we want to pilot. Emphasis on pilot. We want to pilot this form, this flow chart within one of our schools before the end of the year.
okay,
So
okay. That's
that's the
helpful.
goal. Yes.
I see that the person who initially, if, you know, if it is reported, if the contact information was provided, then the person gets interviewed or, you know, reached out to, contacted in some way in the yellow part in part 3. At the end of the investigation, are they guaranteed a closure to the, like, this is where we landed on, because it's not clear on that safety and support planning, right?
So what I did leave off, and Kristen will back me up on this, is our efforts around restorative justice.
Yeah.
Right, and so that is work that we are actively doing now. And I think by the time we are ready to implement the different tiers of restorative justice, and Kristen can get very detailed in what those tiers are, it will pretty much align with what our response, like at the end of an investigation, what that is going to entail. And we want to take a restorative justice approach to how we restore that sense of safety within the community of the student.
And in the case, let's say you investigate and you say, actually, we don't think that this, you know, we think this was a big misunderstanding and it was, or some, you know, whatever. Is the person followed up with to put some closure there, just to say, like, we understand, you know, you were upset, but here's why it didn't align with
Absolutely,
our, you know.
absolutely. There's repair work to be done, whether, you know.
Because it'd be nice just
Absolutely.
to, it's not codified in that
Yep.
chart that the person, there is closure for the person who reports, and I
Right.
think that's an important thing to. If you're trying to build the trust and utilization of
Mhm,
this,
mhm.
people knowing where it's going to go, because nobody likes to put something out there
Mhm.
and not know ever, did someone read that, you
Mhm.
know, like what happened with it, or, you know.
So I do expand on everything you just said on the flip side, on the, under FAQs.
Okay,
If you read, it goes a little deeper into everything you just shared.
okay,
Initially, if you would have saw the draft that I had before this,
okay.
this was the paragraph that was in that, green box, but it was just too long, so I,
Okay.
you know, move that over to the FAQ section. But I think what I just shared around restorative justice, restorative conferences, I sort of defined that a bit
Okay.
under, safety and support planning.
Any other feedback on the flow chart before we go to the FAQs?
Yeah, if I'm correct, some of this is gonna be anonymous, so when I look at the report, it's victim or third person or report recipient, I'm not quite clear on what that means.
Mhm.
And then, number 4 is, we don't know, anonymous.
Unknown.
Report recipient, is that you would report this to yourself?
So
to speak?
report recipient, as it was defined in some of the research that I was doing, is when a witness to a vice motivated incident reports it to faculty, staff member, another student. That is how it was defined. So it's essentially it's a
I'm not
witness.
clear, I'm not,
It's a witness.
okay.
Yep.
So, a witness, but not a third person, which normally in my vernacular would be
Right,
the same, so it's a little confusing to me.
Yep.
I think it's,
Okay,
what are you thinking, Sarah?
I mean, it's if you see some, like, the person that it didn't whatever, the incident didn't happen to, it was a bystander report.
Mhm.
mhm.
So the report recipient is the bystander, really?
We talked a lot yesterday when we met on this. There's this other layer, we get reports from kids fourth hand
Yeah,
that they just heard, and we're trying to. That was some of the language that was like, okay, how do you capture that? I heard through the grapevine kind of report,
Right.
how do we document it?
Report recipient. It
So-
poses.
there might be a different
questions.
term to use there, but there's, yeah,
But
absolutely.
it's something to carry, I witness it, I report it
Like
to
you
Lori.
Well,
she's
you're
the
saying-
He's a report recipient.
Like over
Yeah.
here, it's
Filling out the
outside
form.
person, could you use outside person?
Yeah. We'll go back.
But again, like if this is school based, you know, like this is the lingo that you guys talk all
And-
day long,
right.
right? So maybe that's,
And we experience that with kids, you know, an incident happened and 4 or 5 kids
yeah,
are witness says to that incident, but one of the witnesses are the ones actually making the report and
Yes.
not the victim.
Right, no, I get that, yeah,
But I hear you on the,
Like if
because
it-
as a practical matter, the category other is not something you're gonna reject.
Right.
You're gonna look at it.
right.
And we don't want people to endlessly parse the terminology on a form like this.
maybe this is, I'm sorry.
Anonymous comes through implicitly in number 1, it comes through very explicitly in number 3. And then again in number 4, anonymity. No surprise. And then I could ask this around any of the documents that we're looking at. And kind of a rhetorical question for Andrew and for Carrie, and that is, to what extent and how quickly do we have policy implications considered?
That one.
That's, yeah,
Because we want to make sure things are lined up,
Mhm.
lest this gets inadvertently weakened or
and there's reference to the policy on the back, so maybe we should. wanna move to the back.
there's a link to, absolutely.
There's a link to,
There's a link to the MASC
policies,
policies there.
no, but I mean our policies,
Right.
because MASC doesn't dictate to us.
Right,
it
right, it's our,
advises.
right,
Yeah.
right.
yeah.
I think part of the feedback process also would be to seek the feedback of our legal counsel, Paige Tobin,
Certainly.
make
yeah.
sure we're in alignment.
So my question still, I know it's not on your flow chart, but why isn't it on the flow chart? Like,
Which is,
so
yeah,
my question is, so if it says, we encourage you to contact any school administrator such as principal, before using this form. Why is that? And my concern with that is that you would want to know prior to actually putting it pen to paper. So it could be handled a certain way. That leaves room for, it's not very transparent.
on the form,
No, so you said we want to limit the questions to the flow chart, but if this is what you would want to happen, it should be on the flow chart, but this is what you want people to do before they report.
right, under that first column, or under report.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
Alicia, might there be a fear or concern that by going, if somebody wanted to report it, but instead went and had a conversation, that it wouldn't then get reported?
Yes, because I know, like,
think
my son's been here for 8 years and there's been several incidents and oftentimes it gets brummed or it gets, the concerns of medical students and parents are sometimes, reduced to, oh, you just misinterpreted something or something like that. If this is a concern, if someone feels that they were a victim of a bias, motivated incident or hate crime, they should all be taken seriously. I shouldn't have to go to someone, have a conversation. That's the way I
Right.
feel, so they can, reduce my feelings to, oh, you
Right.
just misinterpreted something.
So I think
And
the
I think it
edit
should be, and
there,
if this is what you want people to do, it
Yeah.
should be on this flow chart.
absolutely, so I think the edit there is we encourage you to complete the bias form and
Yeah.
Yes.
strongly encourage you to contact. So I'll make that edit, absolutely.
So the Newton Public Schools, make a note of this, ties their reporting to policy ACE, and it looks like it was just updated this year to include reporting. Policy. Like,
That's
I think the-
MASC,
imagine Belmont.
Hmm?
I would imagine Belmont has,
Their policy,
so they have.
they don't do mass
MASC.
MASC, I don't think. So I haven't even looked at their reporting, I mean, they have reporting in Newton, but.
I think the FAQs are excellent. I was looking for that and then I turned the page and there they were. I found it a little curious that under hate crimes, it doesn't escalate to assault and battery, from, intimidation and, if you will, more benign.
So it does, and great catch, I think we may have to include what I have written on the front page of the reporting form. 1, 2, 3, 4, paragraph 4. There is some language there around, report immediately any incidents of vandalism, physical assault with or without weapon, property damage, etc. To school administrators and Concord police. So there is a level.
Oh, I
of,
understand that. I understand
Yeah.
that. I just wouldn't want the misinterpretation that the bar has to be really high.
Oh, right. Yeah.
If the first thing you read is assault. Because that's probably not the majority of incidents that we deal with, I hope.
Well, an assault is defined under mass public, mass general law is aimed at instills fear. So, an assault, an assault can be, just it doesn't have to be assault and battery, it could just be an assault, anything that instills fear under mass general law when it pertains to hate crimes.
I guess what I was getting at was what's the right logic in terms of listing these in an escalating form or not? I don't know what the smart answer is. I'm just noting that we're leading off with one that is the most dramatic and potentially injurious and potentially criminal. And again, I'm not proposing anything here, just.
I think this is why I think it's important to, involve, and Aisha, I just remembered your role outside of here. So I may be contacting you, I may be contacting you and, work in partnership with you and our legal counsel. So, yeah.
Back on,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna add policy, I pulled those up, it says MASC and Andrew and I will clarify, there are policies. It's just on the
Yes.
MASC server, so there's a logo up in the corner, but we'll clarify, it's the
Yes.
Concord Carlisle policies,
Yeah.
not MASC's
Okay, so it's in ours.
templates, yeah.
Yeah.
But you can get Channel Concord or Channel MASC.
Yeah, this is all channel Concord.
And our policy AC, we just reviewed, November 8th. This year. Yeah, this year.
Yeah.
This is this is ACE.
No, right, we don't have an AC.
we reviewed AC.
Well, we
Yeah, we
did,
do.
yeah, we did, yeah, it's right here.
That's from 2015.
Just an observation, if this seems like it's more geared towards adults. I think if we want a student document that they're going to read, I think it needs to be simplified and maybe even provide examples of, say, a microaggression, a macroaggression. Put that terminology in there, so when they are reporting it, they can have that conversation in a more meaningful way. And maybe even mention hazing, that's something that could happen in their world. I've got the other point I was gonna make, but I think if we have examples, just to help guide that.
Examples and definitions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the kid version one, so maybe that will come when you get your groups together. I do like that it's like what happens after I report and then safety support and planning. I think that those two pieces are extremely important. And I would say, parents definitely need the FAQs, definitely. So the flow chart, I totally get, this is definitely school-based, but I do think there needs to be a lot of parent education.
Yeah.
Especially around, we talked this year about, kids that are 13. Because legally, things kind of change. I think that parents have no understanding of that. And I also think that, you know, what kids say in text, what they say on their computers, like all of that.
We
I
are
think
very
the parent, yeah. Looking forward to
concerned
that
about
maybe in the fall, you know, to just really help parents understand. And I know that the high school is doing, they have a night of kind of different lecture series that people can go to. I would encourage everyone here to go to, and I am gonna send out kind of a chart of what the rest of our year is gonna look like, and that's on there. And one of the workshops is on, you know, so your social responsibility, and it's the police one about like social hosting. I do think that the texting and the social media piece and everything else, like parents definitely need that education at the middle school level in particular.
No question.
So that would be, you know, something I would look forward to.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
actually, I'm in active conversations
Yeah.
with Mr. Cameron just because of some things that have happened, and the police just sent me a presentation that they've put together that I can send, actually, literally 2 hours ago. The chief is like, would you like to look at this and push it out to the families?
Yeah.
We're reaching out to the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center out of Bridgewater, which does presentations and training, both kids, adults, teachers, and they have a whole presentation on texting, social media, appropriate, inappropriate use, and, the other thing Justin and I talked about was the health curriculum. We need to do more earlier so that the severity of certain behaviors is very clear to kids, because we're not sure we're educating them enough. They're still gonna make mistakes, but we're not sure we're proactive enough in front line.
Yeah.
Lori, you mean elementary school earlier?
Right now, we're talking middle school. Right now, there's too much going on in 8th grade when it's too late, and we need to back it lower in. Yep, so that's the starting point, but
I'd like to get.
Certainly
'cause I'm
elementary.
out of that world, so I'd like to understand, and this is going way off of this topic, and I
Yeah.
apologize, but, you know, when kids are really, able to have smartphones.
well, parents decide that. They're
No,
not
no, no, I
allowed
mean,
them.
Our observation.
Oh, yeah, I don't have
No,
information.
no,
on
I
that,
was
and
saying.
We know certainly middle schoolers have smartphones.
Yeah,
They're
but I
not
think
using them during the day. They have to put
It
them away.
used to be sixth
Yeah.
grade, but I have a feeling it's third grade now.
Oh,
Yeah.
the access.
So I mean. that's
Well, we've
what-
had to send a couple of letters home about you can't text on your smart watch either
Yeah.
in elementary school.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
The world
Okay.
has changed.
I think this comes right back to your reference to examples too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all that's in the strategic planning outcomes, because you're so right. We need to do more.
And Andrew, you may have this, but is there a way for the recorder to know where their report is in the system? Like, you know, we know where our packages are at UPS. Is there a way for them to determine where it is in the system? Because with kids, if they don't see action or know about it, they think it's not important, forget about it. Is there a way to track, we've received it, it's
know,
now in
that's-
the incident review, it's
Yeah.
now in information gathering, you know, just
Yeah,
to show we're working on it, we're committed
Yeah.
to it.
I think that's
Internal
something we
flow chart.
explored.
Right,
I know
right.
we're knee deep in the whole data dashboard, but
Yeah.
if we really wanted to get robust with
Yeah,
this process, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that's.
Yeah, you
something
just
to
got
think
our-
about.
I'm not.
you got
hearing-
us thinking there.
I'm not hearing that. What I'm interpreting you saying is, there's a flow chart within the flow chart
Yeah.
that the investigators follow, and you're gonna do it whether you have a flow chart or not, so Sharon's saying, let's get a flow
Show
chart.
them what's happening
At the end of each
Right,
step.
At the end of
They
each
just get a
step.
little
Like
update,
whole-
right?
Yeah, like when I check my prescription, I can see if it's at the doctor, if it's ready, if it's in process,
And then the
right?
information gathered, like
I think
we
you
are
should.
doing the investigation.
I think it
Yeah.
keeps the students engaged and.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
And then like, you know, just an example, like when an investigation is open, like the police open investigation, there's a chain of custody, so this would like,
Right,
you know, lead to the whole chain of custody, so that would be like a real life.
good point, yeah. That's a great point.
That's a great, yeah. All right, do we want to transition to the form?
sure.
I think we probably should take. I'd say take, I don't know. 2-3 minutes and just scan through. Again, the admin team had the pleasure of previewing this yesterday. They provided a lot of feedback that I have already, their input have already been, entered on this form, and so this is the most up-to-date. As far as,
Continue for the fund.
Yeah, yep, yes, we have to do it right now. Continue.
And I'm ready with paragraph 2. There's a, last sentence, all information collected is subject to. So to me, that means it is only subject to if it rises to the level of forwarding to, criminal investigation. My fear, however, is people won't understand it exactly that way and might fear that any report will actually trigger a criminal investigation and might then discourage people. So I would advocate some way of saying, you know, if it is found to require that. Do you follow where I'm going?
You want like one applicable added to the end of
Yeah,
the sentence.
something like that, because
Or
I just fear that a parent or a child is gonna say, boy, if I say a word, this is gonna be, you know, my friend's gonna be hauled off in handcuffs. Or some such.
Put that sentence in that other paragraph where it's, will we keep incidents confidential to the extent possible unless it requires judicial action, like when applicable. Information collected to investigate allegations of hate crimes is subject to federal and state criminal investigation
I like that.
protocols.
Yeah. When applicable.
Something like that,
Yeah,
just tie it to the part that it's more connected to,
Right.
which is like, if it rises to this occasion, this is what is governing the.
Yep.
yeah, I'm not saying soften the
Yeah.
follow through, I'm just saying, don't, because there is a lot of reticence to report.
Yeah.
By young people because of the fact that they might be re-victimized because they reported it. Is that not a known
That
phenomenon?
was, yep.
Very much.
So I think the words matter there. The next sentence, we will keep incident reports confidential to the extent possible unless it requires judicial action. We don't decide judicial action. Doesn't law enforcement decide judicial? We decide law enforcement. We kick it to law enforcement. Is judicial following law enforcement. Am I correct, Alicia?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay,
Correct. Yep.
so I think,
It's all judicial needs to be edited. Yeah. Requires law enforcement.
Or unless we're required to report it.
Which.
yeah, unless we
lead
are required to
to
report it, keeps it
judicial
pretty
action.
simple.
Right.
Yeah,
We might want to be broader than that, because
Yeah.
DCF's another mandated
Yeah,
report that we don't get too control.
I also just wonder in general on the report, it just has a lot, it's really long. And I feel like if something like this has happened to you, are you going to go through all of this? In moments like this, I almost wonder if you get the report and then collect the
And then
information as
collect
part
the
of the
addition- yep.
investigation, yeah.
Yep.
Cause
Absolutely.
otherwise
That
you
crossed my
might
mind.
lose the courage to submit it by question 10,
Right.
you know?
Right.
That was the question I forgot. How is this gonna be rolled out to the student? Is it gonna
Yeah.
be paper form? Is it gonna be electronic?
So currently, the form is in, the complaint form is a Google form.
Like, I seriously wonder if it's just not even like just tell us what happened.
Right, what is that initial? intake?
Yeah, because
Yep.
I feel like when something is, and maybe you want a little bit of caution to like, say like, do I want to do this? I don't know the
Right.
answer to that. You'd be better to answer that, but I just feel like if you're asking all of these, I would probably lose the courage to submit this by the 14th question.
Yeah, I think it's the when, the who,
Yeah, like
and
the critical
the what.
information. Yeah.
what
and
is
then
the incident, that's it.
This you can
Yeah.
collect as you like follow up with
Investigate. Yep.
conversations, yeah.
Agreed.
I think as a child, like by the time you get to 14, you're like, you might second guess
You're like, you know
yourself.
what?
Maybe
But
have
some of this
required
get-
information at the top, and then they can continue if they want, because I know if I see something and I'm worked up, I want to get everything on it.
So on the Google form, there are specific questions that are required.
Yeah.
Not all of them are required, actually, so I do want to emphasize that. I will say, so the date of the incident is required. The location is required, because that's gonna determine which principal is
yep.
investigating.
Yep.
And you're gonna need some of these, probably, if you do have a dashboard,
Mm.
you're gonna need some of these questions. So even though it
Absolutely.
is 8 questions, say, you're just checking a box.
Yeah.
You know, where some kids are gonna have a really hard time with, you know, writing about everything happening, they might just say, I wanna talk about it. You know, and that could be an option too, like, and then somebody could type what happened if you're tracking that, but.
Right.
So I look at the first like 12 questions, it's kind of like a checklist, you
Mm.
know, like they're quick.
So any question with an asterisk next to it means it's required.
Okay.
And just one more, and this may be over the top, is it important to capture how they felt when it happened? Maybe that can help
Mm.
guide some of the conversations with the students later on how to handle some of this stuff, you know? Are they
Yeah.
angry, are they embarrassed, and that can kind of give us some guidance on how we talk to them and what type of support we provide
Interesting
to
point.
them.
Yeah.
Hmm. Absolutely.
You sort of get a little frame of mind
Yes,
insight, yeah.
Do we feel that the questions are appropriate, even for the adults?
And this is gonna get more kid-friendly in
Oh,
another
absolutely.
version too, yeah.
Yep.
So is this one meant for adults too?
This is all adults.
Oh, all
yeah.
adults, okay.
And
So
you
this would
should
be
have-
like a teacher reporting something they saw.
Say again?
This is like a teacher reporting.
Any adult in the school community, parents, faculty, staff.
Yeah, so I guess I don't think an adult would be able to answer these questions. It's more towards the kid. Not that a kid couldn't answer them, just.
So that's why
Yeah,
we're
that's why we're
piloting and
piloting.
having a focus group and all that,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
do more of this
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
with
yeah.
users.
Well, what I keep hearing is that 3 years, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's gonna take 3 years to
We gotta
really
build
get it.
trust in the
You know,
process.
there's gonna be a process through all this. We're not gonna get it right the first time, but we're gonna try as hard as we can.
I mean, we heard from Belmont, they've had a handful of folks who have actually used,
Right,
Yeah.
handful, so.
How long have they had it in place?
About a year.
yeah.
There's nothing magic about 3 years. I think what we're suggesting with that idea about culture is if it works, it takes that long for people to take policy, practice, protocol and absorb it as a belief system, that this is the right way to do it.
Yeah.
First, it's a requirement, and then second, it proves okay, so you and I believe it's the right thing to do. And it's been internalized, and then it's part of our cultural fabric. If we keep it up, we're not done at the end of 3 years. It's a lot of sustaining too. No question about it. That's why we're doing this decades after we started.
Number 3 should have an oval, should have an other option as well, right? If
Mm.
they don't want it to go
Yep.
through a specific principal.
Which one was that, Sharon? Sharon?
Number
Number
3,
three.
it says if you don't want this reported, select other, but there's no
All right,
other
yep,
in
yep,
the
yep, yep.
actual list.
I don't think we said it expressly to you, Andrew, but thank you for getting this far this fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Crazy how a year can go by.
Is there
Chris and
anything,
I started this process last October, we started the
ago, yeah.
conversation, and then November, and so it's been a process.
do you recall, is there anywhere where we had to move away from Belmont, or did that prove to be a pretty good model?
Oh, absolutely, was a
Yeah.
great model,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think some of their feedback included, you know, making sure that the community is trained in understanding why we're even doing this, the process, So the flow chart is a great way to sort of help folks understand, to build that sense of trust, transparency, et cetera. But also training around, the laws. Partnering with Aisha and perhaps our, police chief and our legal counsel to come in and have that training for the adults and the students. That's all part of this process. And I did share in our last DEIB meeting, I submitted a grant to DESE. They have the hate crimes prevention grant that we submitted to, and I did ask for a substantial amount of money, but part of the grant narrative does include training for this work. So, and the goal is to hopefully by the start of the next school year that we are scheduling some of those trainings for the entire community.
As a practical matter, does this do anything, or the work that's underway now, do anything to change the way in which victim and alleged aggressor would be brought together or be separated? So I know that's one of the big fears on the part of some young kids.
Yeah,
Is if I report, I'm gonna be in the principal's office looking at the kid who bullied me. And that is a real disincentive, and it's happened how many thousand times across the nation?
We always give them, we would never insist on that.
And it's
I
part
know
of
we
the
wouldn't
bullying
insist
law.
on it, but I'm
Yeah.
just asking, does that
Yeah.
heighten our sensitivity to that legitimate fear factor on the part of a victim?
Yeah, we don't do it because it's a possible cause for re-traumatization.
Well, no question about it, just
Yeah, and the
reporting.
bullying
triggers
law,
stuff.
all the bullying training that we do, like second step, it's all clear, you don't do
So it's
that.
baked in explicitly.
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I
Okay.
have a question, just to play devil's advocate.
Mm.
Maybe if it's not student to student, maybe it's a teacher that a student has reported an incident. How do we handle that?
Yeah, I think how we handle it now, we, Denise our HR director is our Title IX. And Debbie Dixon is our other Title IX coordinator. And so Denise oversees all the adult faculty staff related incidents, issues, and then Denise handles the student side of things. I do think that together they have to obviously investigate any incident that comes in. And also I think their collaboration in understanding all the details and nuances within the incident is going to be key in how they come to a conclusion to best support the impacted individuals that they are helping move through that incident. So I think that's
Yeah,
really the
and we
process
all
that we have
receive
now.
training on how
Yeah.
to
right. And
perform
we went through training this past summer.
legal investigation.
Yeah.
And then the outcome's always dependent on the severity of the issue and
Yeah.
the players involved and what's gonna be best for the injured person.
So I will take all your feedback, make those edits that you've all mentioned, and we will put another draft in front of you very, very soon.
I just have a couple more comments, sorry. We do have you're all well aware, we have a bullying law in place with another reporting. If we could sort of educate the community what's the difference between these two mechanisms and happens kind of in the same place, or double post, I hate to do that to people on a website, but what's the reporting for that? And sort of re-educate everybody about these things. I know a question from the community is when an incident is reported and it is investigated and is truly a hate crime, that, how do we deal with it publicly if we think we do need to do that? And I know I don't want an answer because it's a very tricky question, but I know it's something that's come up again a number of times from the community, so I just somehow or another.
Yeah, I'd actually be happy to answer because we've talked a lot about this and set what our expectation is, and I think it's important we keep sharing it. If we have unknown kids involved, we're pretty likely to share that more, this, pick a topic, swastika, whatever. What we are sure of is that when we have known perpetrators and victims and we share it publicly, we've done harm. I'm just gonna say it just like that to either one or both children. And so we are not going to share those publicly. I've taken very recent heat for that. And I'm gonna keep taking it because we've learned honestly the hard way and sharing all those and then watching it really disintegrate for the kids involved and believing that transparency and student wellness somehow one oversaw the other. And I'm now quite sure the well-being of the kids must come first. There might be a different situation if somehow we found something up the middle of the unknown and known, but right now that rule of is making good sense to us and serving kids well.
Yeah. Sarah?
Is there a way, I mean, I understand not wanting to call out when a thing happens and say, we know something happened in the 7th grade class or whatever. But is there a way that you aggregate the information so that the community has an idea of the incident, like not specific incidents, but of the incident rate? So that like, you know, at the end of the year, say, okay, this is how many of these kinds of incidents, just to take away
That's what we're trying to
immediacy of
talk
it.
that's what we're talking about is an aggregate reporting. And figuring out how best to do that, so.
I'm not saying.
No, I'm glad you brought it up, because it's a really important topic right now, and I'm glad to get a chance to say it to all of you as to how we're proceeding and,
Because it's that middle ground where all the kids go home with some story or another, which may or may not be accurate. And then, you know, how do you, I mean, I'm sure that's a constant.
You know, as much as I just said everything I said, there was one incident this year that happened so publicly in a classroom, we did have to share more. But that's actually not the norm, thankfully, or not, I don't know. But when it's quieter, we're making the kids the priority. I guess I'll leave it at that. That might leave some gray, but usually it means if we know who's involved, we're not sharing it publicly.
And maybe to add on to that, you know, as an institution of learning, if you out a perpetrator, you take away that opportunity for their learning that they did something wrong. You know, this is not adults we're talking about, it's 12-year-olds, you know, or whatever. And they need that sort of safety to feel like I can relax so that I can figure out what I did wrong and how I can make amends. So that's part of it, is like, this needs to be a learning opportunity.
And even adults can fall into that category.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, everyone wants to figure out who it was.
Definitely makes you think when the kids are reporting and the first thing out of their mouth is, you're not gonna send a letter home, right? And that we had to stop ourselves and start to go, wait a minute, maybe they're not gonna report if they think we're gonna send a letter home all the time. And it just led to a lot of really important conversations.
Yeah, but at the same time, people not knowing that something, so if people know that things happen, they get more courage to report stuff, right?
Like, there's actually action and
But
there's actually something
when,
happens.
when you feel like you're the only one who's experiencing something, you're much more reticent to.
Right, so it's the how we
to
communicate
bring it up, because you're like, oh, you know what, I must be, you know.
It's the how.
Not, processing things properly.
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you so much for.
Yeah.
This is really, I think this is what we've all been craving to see, and keep up with the good work, and so we have this in front of us. And then the only thing, I think, the last piece that
The
you were
last
touching on
piece,
is hiring.
yep, it's hiring, and all I'm gonna share is that Denise Zahn, again, HR director, and I are, well, let me first say that as a district, Concord Public Schools, Concord Carlisle, we are now members of MPDE, which is Massachusetts Partnership for Diversity in Education. This is a sort of consortium of whole lot of districts. There are roughly 47 districts who are, who have membership with MPDE. And so, as part of our responsibility, we will be attending this career fair on Saturday, March 18th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Concord and Concord Carlisle will have a table at this fair. And I just started to pull together, as I'm sharing now, sort of a few sort of materials that we will have displayed at our table. And some of those materials include all of the anticipated job vacancies that we will have, that we have available for the 23-24 school year. Another, document that applicants will have access to is our current strategic plan, district strategic plan, and all the objectives and initiatives of the 2018-2023 plan. And then they will also have this one pager. They'll be able to scan that QR code that will bring them to our strategic plan for DEIB. And then they will also have access to our equity audit findings and recommendations. That is just the PowerPoint presentation that Dr. Warnham and Dr. Blake provided to the school committee. And then lastly, applicants will also have access to this document that METCO Inc. created for all 33 METCO districts. And this is just our district's METCO profile. So it talks about, it has some of our academic data up there, some of the sports extracurriculars that we offer, what our METCO structure is, and the supports that are provided. So those are just the documents that applicants will have access to. We are also planning, hopefully, there is a lot of applicants who attend this career fair, and so we are hoping to also conduct very brief screening interviews with any applicant that is interested in any of the anticipated vacancies that we have. So a lot of great work happening in terms of hiring. And lastly, we are working, myself, Chris, and Laurie are working with the CCTA. I think we've shared this in the past. They have also established a hiring committee within the association. Oh, Tracy's on there as well. Don't want to forget about you.
Totally.
And so I have been in touch with Wellesley College, and we are hoping to host a focus group with some of their undergraduate and graduate students of color, including professors of color, to better understand some of the strategies, incentives that they believe schools, companies, organizations need to be exploring as they try to diversify their workforce. And so we're working hard to solidify a date for that focus group, but that communication between myself and Noah, who is the career services director, I believe, at Wellesley College, we've been in communication practically every week since February, and so more to come on that. And that's really it.
It's great.
Yep.
And you gave us the updates and all the multicultural food
Yep.
tests, so I encourage everyone here to attend one or more of them. The
Yeah.
high school one is happening. That's probably the largest scale
Large,
one.
yep.
For the number of
Just
kids,
because the
yeah.
number of kids at the high school, but certainly they all do it different. Alcott, Willard, the high school, Thoreau, they're all gonna do it different, so might get some pointers on that. And the high school one has not happened in 2 years, 3 years,
Before
4
COVID,
years.
yeah.
It happened like
It
in
happened right
March.
before, yes, in March.
Someone stood there 48 hours before we closed. Are you worried about, are you worried about the virus? No. I remember 48 hours later we closed.
And they do have a lot of
That was a bad idea.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law to that, and I'm like, oh, no, oh, no.
They're desperate for volunteers in high school, so there's a sign up sheet if anybody
If
wants to
anyone
go.
is interested in Ghanaian cuisine, I will have a table there with some delights, so please do attend.
Tell me he was also gonna have a table, so.
Oh. Folks online do attend all the international multicultural festivals that are happening, not just the high schools, but
So thank you so much, everybody. Just a couple of updates. We have rescheduled our Boston meeting to April 11th. That is official. I'm gonna work
So
on
at the
Taco
Park Center?
Pizza. Is it
Yes.
definitely the Park Center?
Yes, it's
good
definitely
book.
at the
Okay.
Park Center. Devin and Felicia were trying to get at least an initial notice out this week so people would know.
Because I'm gonna do the bus stops.
Oh, great.
So
Great.
it's a regular scheduled, it's.
It's a regular
Okay.
scheduled meeting. It's not an additional meeting, April 11th. We do have a time limitation at Croc Center. It closes at 8, so we literally need to be done at 7:55. because those doors are closed at 8 o'clock. We all know that.
Yeah.
I have a couple of high schoolers, they might be seniors, that need some community service that are gonna help with childcare. And we'll talk more about childcare, pizza, et cetera.
Great.
All of our coffees are scheduled, so I'm gonna push out a schedule to everyone.
And that's
you
a
know,
5
what's
o'clock
the website.
start?
That's a 5 o'clock start, I believe.
And the
Double check.
social, the
Social.
pizza was at 5 and the meeting starting at
5:30.
5:30.
Okay.
And the last announcement, this is more so for parents, MECO Advocacy Day is March 21st. So
21st.
parents out there, if you're interested in attending, that will be at the State House, starting at 9 AM on the 21st.
Yeah, and Liz Miranda will be at the medical office on Friday. Right,
Liz,
Liz Miranda, Senator Liz Miranda.
okay,
Oh, right, I saw that.
Okay.
Thank you.
nice.
A lot of Concord, I was telling her, a lot of Concord parents like campaign for her, so she's like good friends with a lot of Concord medical
excellent.
parents.
Oh, wow. Great. All right, so with that, I'm gonna adjourn the Concord Carlisle School Committee.
If I
Thank you,
might,
everybody.
if-
Oh, yep, Court, go ahead before we adjourn.
Next time around, when you give us an update, could you speak to the idea that was presented to us by a citizen around exit interviews,
Oh, yes.
please, next time around? Thank you.
Yes, and we have one last DEIB workshop, I don't know what we're calling them. I think they're technically workshop meetings. And I believe it's on May 17th, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll get you up the schedule. So thank you, Andrew. We'll see you one more time this year or any other time you want to come. And with that, I will adjourn Concord Carlisle School Committee. Thank you.